Hello and welcome to the last video before rotation. We're doing Shadow again because I thought NEP would be an interesting one to end on before, just for the end of Starforge Legends. I mean, I will have a rotation video out that will either be out pretty much now or maybe just before this video if you want to check that out, guys. This is a pretty standard NEP list. There's taking for a little bit of the crafts that are around at the moment, but other than that, obviously this being the last video and last day of rotation, this deck doesn't mean much. It's just going to be some fun, and I'm sure that this deck would change in the unlimited format too, so you guys can just check this out. We'll play a few games here and I'll talk about them and enjoy it before the rotation hits, everyone. So the first game of our final video for Starforge Legends before we go into Cryogenesis. We have to face Forest, one of the probably most popular decks this month, pretty easily. Pretty crappy hand. Sulk version's okay. Fel Tempest was average, but without anything to combo off on them, they're just not worth keeping. So we are able to get a Pure-Hearted Singer and a Belenus, along with the Zombie Party, which are much better to play against a Forest player. Being able to deal with their early game a lot easier. So, Belenus comes down. Solid 2-drop. I'm sure he'll still see play, even after the rotation occurs. And of course, Pure-Hearted Singer, still amazing draw power, can't go wrong with that card at all. Very keen to see what rotation brings us in the way of new decks with every card that's been revealed. It's going to be very interesting to see how the meta ends up shaping up. I'm really excited to test out some puppet decks and probably some artifact decks and maybe some combos of both, along with the blood support and probably the sword support, just to see what kind of decks can be made from those. Along with the new shadow mechanics and stuff, I'll be really keen to just mess around with a lot of things. So make sure to look out for those videos for unlimited and full rotation. They will be fairly regular and fairly frequent. So Grim, nice way just to block off a Forest board, always a good card. Won't be long before all the Rage of Bahamut cards rotate out. We're looking at probably a month to month where the latest 5 expansions stay in rotation and everything else rotates out behind it, which will be really interesting to see. So the Forest player just building a board again, throwing out fairies repeatedly. We can fortunately block off the entire board with Death's Breath, no problem at all. All you got to do with this deck is make it to 8, drop NEP, get your Mordekai's out, hit face as much as you can while blocking off their damage. Nothing too crazy from a NEP deck. But nothing's going to be too crazy, I think, in rotation. Everything looks good. I definitely feel like there's a lot of room to experiment, but not really that much of like super overpowered cards, at least from what we've seen as of the making of this video. We have still got a few cards to reveal before then, so I'm sure we'll have covered everything by the time this comes out, but that'll be probably about a week or more from now. And like I said, look out for the unlimited and the rotation videos. Hopefully we'll have some different kind of content as well. I'm also probably going to be hosting tournaments for the SEA regions and for obviously Australia, New Zealand regions, those sort of time zones, where pretty much everyone will be welcome. And if you want to check any of that out, you can check that out from Shadow Nexus, which I'll link in the description below. So Mei, hitting this Mordecai, not too big a deal. We've already dropped the NEP, we've got our Mordecai out, our health's at a good level, we've got enough wards and blockades and damage dealers in our hand that we're not really concerned by what our opponent can play out at this point. Especially since removing these Mordecais is insanely difficult. Especially when you have 2 of them on board. But Forest player is stalling me out pretty well. I mean, there's no way for me to easily get over this. So trading these Mords, probably the better idea. Being able to then throw up the Death Breath leaves a lot of damage on our board and leaves them with very little. Ancient Elf, I'm going to miss that card. There's a lot of cards I'll miss. You know, Mordecai's going to be rotating. You know, all those sort of cards. Death Breath, I believe, is part of the rotation. Obviously, I can't memorize every single thing that's rotating and what parts, what sets they're a part of, but it's very interesting that we're going to have a pretty fresh meta starting very, very soon. May hitting the Mordecai, perfect. Gives me a full one. Now we just need to be able to remove these. So another Death Breath. Still an amazing card for blocking boards. I'd really hope we'd have something similar for Shadow that we could take advantage of, but I don't know if we ever will. Not something of that level anyway. So they do go for the Jungle Warden. Once that trades, it will be pretty easy to get rid of. I mean, Grimnir 4 damage to board. Clears it off nicely. And then our Mordecais go face for 12 and leaves them at 1, which I'm pretty sure will round out this game. So our next matchup is against Sword. Jet Black Roar. What an awesome title that is. Like, Flare. I really like that one. Just because it is cool. Pretty average hand. Pretty garbage. Especially starting off. Belenus with his awesome hairdo. He could almost be a Yu-Gi-Oh character with that kind of style. And Grimnir, of course, with its beautiful blue. Still confused on whether it's a male or female, but who really cares? It's Grimnir, the War Cyclone. And of course, you gotta have those Nepthies. If you don't have the Nepthies, what are you doing with your life? And then Sword's just like, yay, we'll throw a bunch of male characters at you and lose. But luckily, we're not going for that answer. So send our Vanguards, that's fine. Pretty much everything they've played so far is going to be easy to deal with. Once we trade the Belenus, we almost guarantee killing something. And then Grim blocks off any of these cards from actually getting any decent use.
The legend begins.
All we need now is to push our own board against them, while at the same time dealing with as much as we can. Beautiful Peacock. Pity he's an undead Peacock. So from here, Sword doesn't really have many answers to this sort of thing. I mean, having to use stuff the way they are now isn't going to be much good to them. I can throw up the little Soul Squasher or Death Breath as needed. Throw up the other Andress if we really want to. Which I probably should have done first. Thrown it up, evolved it, gained the Soul Squasher double draw instead. But we also don't want to risk overdraw, so it might not have been a good idea to make the Soul Squasher draw 2. Dance of Death. Pretty common in Sword now, I think. And I wouldn't be surprised if people use a lot of similar 5 stat removal. So we've pressured the board pretty heavily. We've got 4 followers, all to attack. That's going to be a reasonable amount of damage. We can follow up with a nice ward, which is pretty much going to lock down any major play from the Sword player. Add the evolve on top of that, and we've got 10 damage for this turn alone. Leaving them with 8 for the next turn, and they've got to get over that ward. Not an easy spot for the Sword player to get out of, which is quite fortunate. And my final game for Starforged Legends. Before we actually get to play with a lot of new cards, a new format, some new events. There's a lot coming in the new year. It's going to be an absolutely crazy time to play Shadowverse, so I hope you're all there. This hand, not the best. Demon Eater, Soldier, Zombie Party. They're not bad cards, they're a little difficult to play against Sword. Especially for the early game. That draw makes up for it though with the last word draw card on the beautiful, beautiful Peacock. Of course, they have to have a decent card to follow up with on turn 2. Luckily, Sword really doesn't like it when you start using wards against them. So we should be right with double Death's Breath and these couple of cards on board. All we need to do is hold out long enough that it makes a difference. So, the obvious one, easy trade into the 3-1. The next play is where it gets a little more interesting. Lurching Corpse I felt was probably the better start than going for anything else. And then Zombie Partying the 1-3 just to remove it from the board guaranteed. Makes it a little bit harder for them to use anything. Because the 2-1 stat line is very easy to remove. But of course, Sword as usual pushing storm damage. I will be really happy if we see more control Sword type decks with the coming expansion over the purely storm orientated ones we see now. So a nice Pure-Hearted Singer. This deck fortunately has a good amount of draw power. I guess really searching for those Neps before turn 8 so that you can play them out and get substantial gain to the board. So turn 6 is kind of the turning point. Once you can drop those Death's Breath, you can usually do pretty well controlling the board. Of course, this Albert is making things tricky for me with only 4 health. So it's going to be a little bit of risk to the plays we have to make. If they have anything that can remove these zombies effectively, it's going to be very difficult for me to actually make any kind of comeback. And Command is almost perfect to get rid of these. The only good thing I've got is that I can pretty easily follow up with another Death's Breath. Or a multitude of other cards, I guess. Underworld is probably actually better. Just because I can use it as a trade. While also removing the 2-3. Sorry, the 3-2 from the board. So, Sword has to kill the Cowie. That's a pretty straightforward one. As long as they didn't have Storm from here, the odds of me winning go up drastically. So of course, complete board flood, but nothing storm orientated, which is really good. And of course, I've got a full net play, which is going to guarantee some healing. 3 heal. With 1 card in hand, the odds of them having what they need to go for lethal, a little bit lower. We also haven't seen any Juliets or anything, so that's kind of a good sign. The only other option would have been something like double Novice Trooper or just purely to play the Juliets out. But now that we've thrown the wards up, I don't think there's any coming back for the Sword player at all. This just locks them down way too much, which ends in them conceding. So I hope you guys enjoyed this final deck for the Starforged Legends set. It's been a great time playing through it, and I can't wait to go on to all the new stuff. Of course, there will be a link to this deck in the description below, and you can check out all the other links to the Shadow Nexus and everywhere else that you'll need to go for future events and everything that you could ever need for Shadowverse related content. Hope you guys enjoy the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.